Evgeny here with the Moving Target podcast, and I'm here with the good old Bradford. We've been in touch for quite a bit now. He has been a big part of Amply, which is one of the big dogs when it comes to agencies in the Webflow slash web dev space. And they have been doing an amazing job with everything Webflow related, just like we have, obviously. But jokes aside, I'll let him do the introduction for himself. He's an awesome guy, and I'm just very happy that I have a chance to talk to him about what he's been doing since he left Flea and want his take on where the industry is going. Anyways, Bradford.
Awesome. Yeah, to just kind of give you guys an intro about me. So been working, really kind of doing my own thing, freelancing or with agencies for the past 7 or so years. First 3 of those years, that was me being just a freelancer in the Webflow space. I actually did some WordPress stuff initially, then found Webflow. And then after a while, just doing my own thing and trying to build my own agency, I ended up joining Amply when they were pretty early on and was one of the kind of, I'd say, first real full-time employees there. And I led development there for about 2.5 years. And then I was over the growth side of things for the agency the last 6 months. And then just back in June, left that and started my own agency called Native, where I'm focused on building sites on a custom stack, the help of AI and helping enable clients to use AI themselves. I think a big part of that leaving was simply that at Amply, being so close to the Webflow space, as I started to really use AI myself, test out these different workflows, I saw that it was probably the biggest threat that I'd seen so far to Webflow being the best tool out there. Up until that point, I had full confidence that Webflow was the best tool for clients. It solved their problems in the best way compared to anything else out there. And then I started to really heavily use AI. That kind of shifted a lot of things for me. And I wanted to be a part of that shift ultimately for clients, where I wanted to help them take advantage of some of those same benefits that I was getting from using AI to build websites and manage websites. And so that ultimately led me to start Native and do what I'm doing now. And so it's been just a couple months that I've been doing that. And so I'm excited to kind of show some of what our process is starting to look like. We're definitely still figuring everything out, but we're learning a lot of stuff, and it's been fun to really experiment with AI, especially on the design side as well as the development side. So that's a quick intro to me.
It's a really good background. Like, you have been developing for a minute now. And obviously things have been changing quite a lot when you moved from WordPress to Webflow. I'm guessing you had that aha moment. And then you started using AI, and that was another aha moment. And now you're running your own agency in the same way, where you have that moment, like constant aha. You said that you want to bring those benefits to your clients that you had from AI yourself. So can you tell me a bit about those benefits that you've seen? I know you have been doing quite a few products that unfortunately Webflow has killed in terms of they brought out, it's kind of like AI wrapper, and then ChatGPT or any type of AI just releases a feature that kind of replaces yours. And then you have to think about the new thing you want to do. So can you maybe tell me a bit about those products, what those have been, and how you have been implementing AI in those products?
Yeah. So I guess just to clarify, do you want me to talk more about like the products that I did in the past that kind of got killed by different things? Or
I think that could be a good start. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, and like I think this goes more into the story of ultimately how I got here, is I remember like when AI was kind of being heavily like released, I used it a little bit, but like it wasn't something I used very much in my day to day. I think early days of ChatGPT was, mainly good for like copywriting, which just wasn't something that I was doing a whole lot of or using much. So like I just genuinely didn't use AI very much. And then I started to hear about people using it more, and it started to kind of build some steam. And then ultimately where I started to really look at it and use it more heavily is one of the developers on my team. And one of the, honestly, huge shout out to him. So Virat Patel, I brought him onto our team because I ultimately wanted Amply to be this agency that not only did great website work, but I wanted us to be a community player in the space to build products that helped other Webflow developers. So I had brought him onto our team about a year before to help us start building different just free tools and products out there for the Webflow community, and also just to be a really technical person on the team who could help out with bigger, more full stack problems that would come up from clients. And he was definitely more heavily using AI than myself, but he came up with, I think, probably the first version of the actual Webflow MCP that we see today. And so he built out a prototype for that and he shared it online, and there was a ton of buzz around it. Everyone was like, wow, this is amazing, because up until he had shared that, there was really no way in Webflow to get an AI agent to do stuff within Webflow. Like everything that was built out there was more so just this advisor thing. You know, it could maybe read your project a little bit and tell you, hey, here's how classes work. You know, it could kind of just like help answer questions, but there wasn't really anything that was doing a serious job of like building out a section for you or going in there and doing stuff within Webflow. You still had kind of out there AI stuff, but all of that was kind of stuff that happened outside of Webflow. And you really just didn't use the Rayloom app to bring in those sections. And so it was kind of the first time I think we saw real, more so agentic AI possibilities in Webflow. And so when he showed me that demo, I was like, man, we need to do something about this. We need to really capitalize on this, build around it. And so we decided to build this product called Miyagi, which was essentially just a Webflow app that allowed you to have agentic AI possibilities in Webflow. Behind the scenes, really what that looked like is that we were connecting a few different models, creating a chat interface, and connecting those models to the Webflow APIs. And so we're essentially very similar to what the MCP is today. It just basically was more of an integrated experience. You didn't have to go out and, you know, have your own subscription, create the connection or any of that. That's become a lot easier now and everyone's more comfortable with that. But before then, MCPs were pretty new. So we wanted to create something that was a one-click install. People could just sign up and start prompting. And so that's what we ended up building. And we actually had a great response. I think we launched it and we had 700 users within a couple weeks after launch. People were, really excited about it. And then a couple weeks later after that, at WebflowConf, Webflow released their AI assistant, which funny enough still isn't in actual production. I think it's somewhere in beta, it sounds like. But essentially in that demo, it was very, very similar to what we were doing with Miyagi, and it looked like it was going to be better. Ultimately, because of that, and we saw that Webflow is building in that direction, we also behind the scenes at the same time, we're just seeing how difficult it was for us to build it as a legitimate product that was going to be, make sense long term, just because the biggest challenge for us wasn't even, the AI or the LLMs. It was simply Webflow itself as the bottleneck in the Webflow APIs that were available. There was just so much we couldn't do because of them. And also we saw that we had this coding agent part where it was kind of like a mimic of Cursor where you could write custom code through it. That part was 10 times better than the part that actually was working on the designer. And that's simply because the visual interface, that kind of was the bottleneck. That was the challenge, because every single time AI changed something, that was a request that was being made. I had to send that request, send another request to check to see if that element changed, and then it could go from there. So it's just so much slower than a traditional LLM could be in code. So that was kind of where I started to realize ultimately that, man, AI is so much better at doing all this stuff when you strip it away from a visual interface and you don't have to work with that. All you have to work with is code. So that was kind of already where I was seeing that. And then ultimately, kind of because of that, and we saw that Webflow was going in that direction, we just didn't really see Miyagi being a product that would be worth it to fund long term. And so we decided to just pause development and stop. And I'm honestly really grateful we did, even though, Webflow still hasn't released that AI assistant. And someone could make the case, man, if you guys had kept going, you could have built something and made some money on it. But I just ultimately for us at the time, we weren't really interested in just building something and investing a lot of money to have a couple grand in subscription dollars from that. We were hoping for something a bit bigger than that. And so it just made sense for us to just pause and focus on other things. Long story short, that's one of the ways that I really started getting into AI. And it also showed me some of the ways that visual builders in general, whether it's Webflow or Framer or anything, they're at a disadvantage when it comes to this new game because LLMs aren't really built to work in that environment. Everything has to have a workaround essentially to be able to work there. Whereas with code, it's just native to LLMs and they're so much faster and better in that environment.
That makes sense, man. And I just took a look at the video from Timothy Ricks about the brand new Webflow MCP. And the funniest thing was immediately on the first prompt, he's like, wow, this is a big improvement. It's so much faster. And then he just saw everything is embed, which is pretty bad. And it's like you said, like you need to strip away the visual builder to have everything done in code. And then you have to wait for ages for things to be rebuilt visually. That's a big bottleneck, like you said. And the other funny thing for me is regarding the products, Miyagi, you could have invested a ton of money into it and it could have potentially been profitable. But then again, not every company can do what MemberStack did, where they took a product that already exists on Webflow and they've done it better to the point where Webflow decided, well, we're not really going to pursue this business. There's already a suitable product that's even better. You need to have significant resources to get the competitive edge, to get the company that has like 200 plus employees to give up on an idea and say, we'll leave it in your hands.
Yeah. And I think just in general too, you know, seeing how serious of a problem AI is to Webflow, when it kind of threatens, I would say, the core problem that the product solves, I think there was never going to be a world where that would happen, where Webflow would just say, hey, we're just going to like have you guys handle the AI stuff. You know, I think with MemberStack's a unique scenario in that sense. And I think credit to their team, they did amazing stuff. And you actually worked with MemberStack for a bit, I know. But I think memberships weren't such a core part of Webflow's product. It was a gray area there where it's like Webflow could try to expand in that area. Like they did release their memberships at one point, but I think they didn't see enough, you know, that drive enough revenue to make sense for them to keep supporting rather than just having MemberStack take care of that area. So, I mean, I think it's always a challenge you're going to have building a product on the back of another product is kind of how are they eventually going to absorb what you do or make what you do irrelevant? And, you know, it works out for some. And I think more often than not, it doesn't work out for others. And that's okay.
You've, as of recently, started up your own company. I'm assuming it's together with Julian.
Yep. Julian's a co-founder.
And you, at this point in time, are working on developing the agentic workflows. I'm guessing you're still figuring things out. And a lot of things that I'm seeing is that the workflow changed significantly. People are now not designing as much or are trying to implement either Figma MCP or tools like paper design for their design processes. I'm interested in seeing what your design process looks like now and how it changed compared to back when you were working at Ampli.
Yeah, we can dive into that a lot. I can show a lot of stuff. So I would say that's one of the biggest areas that I'm having fun just figuring out right now. I would say I definitely don't have a lockdown design process. I will say overall, I don't think the design process itself has changed that much. And what I mean by that is the steps that I'm following with clients really aren't that much different than they ever were. And I think most people follow these steps. And I think ultimately, like what that looks like in a nutshell for me is I'm still starting with the very basics with people. I'm still just presenting a lot of different hero concepts and a lot of different variations at the start. You know, the client's giving a lot of feedback on those variations. They're talking through and telling me which ones they like the most. We're locking down on some kind of more rough draft things that they like. We're going and taking that and turning it into a homepage. And then once that's a homepage, we're going in and building out the whole site. I think that process is followed by most agencies. The main difference that I'm finding is I'm just not using Figma as the main hub and the tool there to manage everything. What I've been prototyping, what I've been trying to do is actually just simply use like Claude as that canvas. I'm not really even using paper. I've tested it out a little bit Right now I'm just using Claude for it, and I've run one project through it and it actually went very well. And there's still some like kinks I'm working out and things I'm going to improve, but I'd be happy to just kind of show a little bit more of what that looked like doing that, some of the things I ran into, some of the things that I found out through it. And yeah, so let me figure out how to share here and I can share this project. All right. So as you guys probably know, I mean, watching this, so like the main place that I'm working is with Claude Code, and I use ShipStudio kind of as the wrapper around that. Makes things really simple. So if you're wondering what I'm using here, this is ShipStudio. This is pretty much what I work out of every day. And this is the project that it's not live yet. So this will probably be live after this podcast goes live. But I'll kind of just walk through some of the findings through this project, and I'll pop it open right here so you guys can see it more in the browser. Yeah, so this is Omni Labs. Basically, this client came to me. This is their live current site. And when they came to me, they're like, hey, we just want kind of the simple refresh. We have the site in Webflow. They're really excited to get it out of Webflow and build, more of a custom stack with Next.js and Sanity. And they really weren't expecting a whole lot on the design front. They had played around with Claude Design a little bit. They're very, AI native as a company already. So they were exploring that. They'd come up with some new copy, and so they kind of had somewhat of a brief that they gave me, and they kind of explained a little bit what they wanted this product to evolve as. And so this is kind of the end result we're at right now. So as you can see, I'm super stoked with this site. It's looking really clean. Love the design of it, and it's a huge elevation over their existing brand. I've done all of this imagery kind of animations. This has all been created by Claude. I can dive into that a little bit more because I would say that's one of the biggest challenges I had is once I got a good design, it was figuring out how do you elevate that design, have good imagery that matches the brand, it tells a good story, and doesn't just feel like, slop or over complicated stuff that you'll a lot of times see AI come up with initially. I also created in here, like on their OS page, I created all of these product animations. This is all done with Claude. So very similar to traditional Lottie, but these are much, much better for so many different reasons. They're lighter, they're easier for the client to edit in the future. I've been super stoked with the output of these. So I'll kind of dive into the whole process, but let me kind of backtrack a little bit. So initially, when the client came to me, I was really trying to figure out, okay, how do I get this really good output out of Claude? And I think one of the disclaimers I'll put out here when you're trying to with AI, something that I found, and I think I noticed this when like looking at the sentiment of designers when they use AI, is that designing with AI is not a linear process. With traditional design, if you're a good designer, it's going to look like, all right, I'm going to sit down at Figma and I'm going to start, putting stuff together and building out a hero section. And that hero section is going to look good. So it's kind of this linear process from like nothing to good. And then you're going to keep more and more variations off that all look good. The difference with AI is that you're going to have a lot more bad in between nothing to getting to good and getting to great. Some of the first results I was getting from this, they were bad results. So yeah, I think this is one. What I was trying to do was like my ultimate goal with them was like trying to give them from our first call where I got all of this feedback. I wanted to follow that same process and give them a couple distinct different visual variations. And so this was, I think, one of the first times I was just seeing what Claude could come up with. So I'd given them the brief, given it some info, and I told it to create like 5 different hero sections, I believe. And so it was like, okay, like it's got some weird lines here. I kind of tried to tell it like to create something similar to what we have now on the live site, but this isn't like anything presentable to a client. But I guess it's like not the worst thing ever, but you've got a lot of issues in different places. So it's okay, but it's not good. And so I think this is what like a lot of times this is the kind of result you'll get from a prompt with AI. And that's where a lot of people just like give up and they leave and they go back into Figma and just start designing everything by hand because they know they can get this linear process to good. I think I had a bunch more here options here. This was another one. again, it's okay, but it's not really good. This was like, I think I told Claude here, like, give me like 5 different hero sections in different directions. A lot of this is just like overcomplicated. It's not like this one is a bit better, you don't have as much weird stuff. But what I found though is like a lot of this kind of works like it you're not actually having to go in and like design all of this. In a really quick amount of time, you can kind of just visually prototype ideas out. I didn't have to go and like drag together and build all of these sections in Figma. So it was helping me at least to like start seeing things that I liked and things that I did for the client.
And Bradford, I do have a question. You're showing me all these different versions, and sure, they have some weird things within them, but the result is not terrible. So there still must have been quite a bit of, number one, I'm assuming prompting, but number two, you probably have a set of documents you are asking of clients to deliver, such as brief, etc., etc. What does that look like? What do the clients deliver for you to be able to deliver work even at this level of quality? Because what I'm seeing is that a lot of designers that try agentic workflows get results that look nothing like what you're showing me. There are some dashboards, but they look a lot more like AI slop compared to what you're showing me. And I do understand that these are very first prompt type of results based on what I understand.
I wouldn't say I put in a whole lot of, like, I definitely gave Claude context, but it's not like I went crazy with that. I think the gist of what I gave Claude was like, so the client had export an HTML file, which is kind of like one direction we could go in. And that was just like one shot they got from Claude. But to be honest, like it looked the most like this one, kind of like this, where it had this kind of like gradient thing over this. It looked very much like, I've noticed as I've seen like people kind of share Claude Design. I've noticed Claude Design uses a lot of the same like design little things, and it looked so much like that. It didn't look necessarily bad, but I wanted to elevate their brand and make sure that it didn't just look like something someone pulled from Claude Design. And so I did upload that in the prompt. So that definitely helped get this overall direction. And then they had probably like maybe a 2-paragraph, I think I had probably like a 2-paragraph or 3-paragraph thing where I brought in a message the client sent. They kind of referenced a few sites that they liked the look and feel of. And so I was kind of just using that. I think I put in like their original site and like maybe a paragraph from my mindset of like what I wanted it to do. So like, I wouldn't say I put in a whole lot of work to get these out. Like, it's not like I described every single thing I wanted and like really heavily guided it. It was more like, hey, here's the context that I have. Go out and build 5 distinct different hero sections that I can look at. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the gist of it. Does that kind of answer that for you?
Sure does, man. Sure does.
I think something to call out too that I've seen just like overall designing with AI, like I do have my default skills that I have installed. I think a big one that will just help your design quality is always use front end design. That skill is really good. So these shots definitely have these skills in place, specifically this front end design one. So that's definitely one I would recommend using, and that's going to help. But yeah, so basically went through a bunch of options here. I think the other thing I just like realized, I've been out of the design game for a bit. And I think like the biggest thing I realized when you work with AI is you have to do more telling AI to remove stuff than telling AI to add stuff. And what I've seen with AI more and more and more is that when you design with AI, oftentimes AI can make something that looks visually good, but it struggles with making something that tells a story and is more so thought out with the product in mind. And that's kind of something I noticed with a lot of these is like some of these dashboards, like I think this would probably be a good example here. Like this looks visually good, but like for me as a user, I hate this. Like I don't know what this is even saying. And I think that's kind of like a fault. I would say people are heavily using AI to just design is oftentimes they'll design for looking good, but it'll add in a lot of unnecessary stuff that honestly just kind of overwhelms or confuses the user. And so I think that's where there's still a ton of human expertise and things that needs to be put in place, is just using AI to help you iterate. But ultimately, like, you've got to be the one to think of, how can I create this here section that is going to really capture people and allow people in one glance to understand the message that I'm trying to get across. And so I think that's what I was trying to do ultimately, was doing this, but also myself, understanding their core business, the whole goal of the site, and then come up with a hero section that really fits that and matches that. And so then kind of moving on from here, I also played around with, because initially I was really focused on getting a really good hero image or something that stands out there. I didn't really end up using anything that came from this, but I did think it was a good thing to call out. But I actually used ChatGPT Image 2 a decent amount, just to not even to get anything production quality, but just to brainstorm. Because the challenge you have with Claude is that Claude is confined to code when it comes to creating ideas for you. So a lot of times it's going to stick to very similar patterns and very similar things, just totally okay. But sometimes you just simply want to brainstorm really quick, and you don't want to wait for Claude to run for 20 minutes to build all of these things out in actual HTML and CSS and everything. And I found for just really quick iterations where I was almost just needing to use this as a visual way for me to figure out what would look good and what's ideas that we could explore further. I found ChatGPT Image 2 is not bad for that. For example, none of these I would say are good designs, but I was basically kind of given the same prompt here and just saying, okay, let's create 10 hero section ideas. And this was just an easy way. We didn't end up going with anything like this necessarily, but this was an easy way for me to just get some ideas in my head of hey, this could be a cool concept we could explore for a graphic, and we could make an animation out of this. And that's something you can then put into Claude as an input and say, hey, I really actually like this idea. I like how we have this funnel and we're going to animate it and make it really cool. That's where I found this was really nice. Did you have a comment?
This is very cool from the standpoint of mood boarding.
Yeah.
Not in the sense of a standard, hey, here are these different color and typography solutions. These are the ways in which we may move forward from wireframing onwards. But you're actually saying, okay, we've got the content, we've got the website live already. Here is the direction that the client decided to go in, and you have the basic outline of the visual direction. So kind of the mood boarding is done. But this part of mood boarding is, here's the features that we could include. Here's the visual assets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough for me, because I've noticed that whenever you're working with AI, at least in Claude, it doesn't really give you imagery.
Yeah.
And whenever it does, it sucks, because everything is dashboard based. It's very similar, and it's just AI slot. And here in ChatGPT, you have created mood boards for visual assets, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. ChatGPT Image 2 didn't really play a part in anything that made it onto the site. It's not like it generated any images that I actually use, but it allowed me as a designer going through this process to get out a lot of ideas that I then could sketch out further with Claude Code and present to the client. So ultimately, kind of all of this stuff I'm showing to you happened in a couple days, kind of before my first initial call with the client. Did a lot of different variations, and ultimately, my goal is to be able to present to them basically 3 to 4 different distinct directions that we could go in that were at least more polished than what I showed you here. Unfortunately, those final ones, those were in the product I'm building off of now, so I can't just quickly go back and show that part of it. But I'll say one of the other things I wanted to call out was kind of a breakthrough, because I kept kind of getting similar results out of Claude where I was it's okay, but it's not necessarily that good. I wanted to shout out, I did use this paid MCP called Referrer.design, which kind of the goal of this is that this is trained on more modern SaaS pages and everything. So they've got a skill you can install and an MCP, which allows your agent to essentially research a lot of other high quality designs before creating anything. So I gave this a try because I was kind of getting stuck. I was I need something just better and more polished. And I wasn't really achieving that. And I tried that skill out, and there's a noticeable improvement in the designs from what I've showed here to something that it wasn't quite as good as what is here, but it was much, much closer to this in terms of everything. There wasn't all these little errors everywhere where like you could go through those designs and see things with think fly and they don't really look good. When I used that, I would say it really made a, maybe 20, 30% improvement on just the overall output.
And how does the MCP and the skill work? Like, what do they do and how did you use them?
You basically just follow their instructions and install it. And then once you've installed it in that session, it's just going to reference that before any chat that you do. So, I mean, it's super easy to use. I basically installed it, gave it my same prompt, but I noticed the output was a lot better.
It's kind of a mix of front-end design and mobbing, where you get references to marketing websites and some design skills pre-installed, and then it gives you good output based on that. That's a really cool thing. Like I did not hear about this one before. We'll have to check it out.
So yeah, I would recommend if you're trying to do something like this, give it a try. I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't really expect much out of it, but I think it made a difference. I also played around with Claude Design a little bit. Claude Design was good. I was impressed with Claude Design in creating animations, kind of like hero style animations. They were much cleaner than what I was getting out of Claude Code. So I'm not sure what kind of made that difference, but I just genuinely did get better results from those. Let me see if I have any other like just projects to share that are in the main one. Let me see. This might have something.
Oh, and also before you move on to another project, how long did it take you to actually get from zero to hero? Obviously, the project is not yet fully approved, but how long did it take you to the point where you are now?
Yeah, I would say like in terms of hours, I would say it's probably a decent bit less than it would, in a traditional process. There's definitely time savings. In terms of actual like time taken, like we started this project, it was kind of start of June, and we're like mid-July and we're like basically ready to launch the site. It could be much faster. There's been, like client feedback always takes time and there's things you wait on with clients. So I would say I'm very happy with just overall time output. The client's super happy with it. The time of iterations has been very fast. I couldn't give like an exact estimate on anything, but been very happy with the time and results and everything like that. So, yeah, I wanted to show this. Sense. This is what I got from like Claude Design, putting a bit more effort into it. The client didn't end up going with any of like these directions. They kind of liked, I would say these are more like a softer direction, a little bit more playful in typography and everything. I thought these were good quality. And like, honestly, the thing that I liked more about these is that like a lot of those other heroes I was showing you were like, it was almost like too much information. You're getting hit with a lot. These did a better job at just being like kind of more simple and digestible. But what I really liked was like this kind of stuff. Like, I feel like Claude Design did a much better job coming up with like more so like an animation that you could kind of like actually potentially use. And let me,
wait,
there's a couple more too.
Just another question. So basically you have shown me animations that have been done through Claude Design, but the imagery within those animation sections, those images have been done through ChatGPT. Is that correct? I'm assuming that the process looked like, okay, you have created the mood board for the potential hero sections with the images, and then you have fed it to Claude Design saying, hey, these are the directions that I actually like. Can you recreate that and animate that? Is that how it worked, or is it a different workflow?
Not necessarily like that, I guess. It worked, like these were more just straight from Claude Design. I guess I took maybe some of those ideas from the brainstorming session, but I didn't necessarily use them as an input in Claude Design. These were more like just Claude Design's output. But overall, I thought these were much, much more presentable. I mean, like this one's genuinely like pretty good. Like this is a cool animation that could have been used if the client wanted to go that route. So
yeah, and obviously you could have polished it a lot more. You could have added the LinkedIn logo, Google logo, Salesforce, etc., and then their logo as well. Obviously, there is room for
Yeah.
improvement, but this is freaking awesome. I love these SVGs animations. They're always pleasure to look at.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the overall gist. I'll say a couple more things here on the design process. Like ultimately, like what it came down to. And I think this is the great part of this process is iterations are fast. So what ended up, happening is I presented all these options. I got on a call. I really heard from the client what they wanted, what they envisioned. And a big part of that for them and why we landed more so where we did is that they are an agency that has a product, the Omni OS, that they offer to their clients and just their clients. They don't sell that product. And so a big thing was, making sure that we didn't confuse that and make it seem like they're just a SaaS company that's selling a product. And so ultimately that led to us going with, the images of the testimonials and the hero to kind of pull through a bit more of the message that they're an agency that has this product as a competitive advantage, but ultimately they're a paid media agency and they're providing a service. And so that's, I think, what I'd say is like ultimately like the great thing about AI is you can iterate more, you can iterate faster, and ultimately get to the end result with the client sooner, I would say, because there's just not as much time needing to go into exploring these different ideas and different options. So I'm really, really happy with where it turned out. Kind of as I went through this process, once I landed on that direction, went through the site, I did spend more time. I won't go into it, but imagery was probably the next big thing that I had to tackle and just getting these. These were all ended up being created with Claude. I did kind of do some of that brainstorming with ChatGPT Image 2, but like I really just use those to get ideas. And then I like really described with Claude what I wanted. Once I landed this first one, it helped me find the style that I wanted the imagery to follow throughout the site. What I ended up doing in that project is I created a skill. I had Claude create a specific skill for the imagery that documented my philosophy on imagery. A big thing that I noticed Claude does just by default is if you tell it, hey, go create a image for this copy, what it will do is it will read that copy and create something that literally describes that copy in image form. So it's got a bunch of arrows everywhere. It has text labels. It's too specific. And so when I found I had to teach Claude, no, don't go that specific. You just need to do something that lightly references what's in that copy to kind of carry it through. Okay? And keeping it simple was something I really had to enforce. So like, I think you especially see that down here. These are not complex imagery. They just help kind of support what's in the copy. Whereas initially, when I'd asked Claude to create this, it would be doing some crazy thing with a line pointing somewhere and something's moving around. I had to pull Claude back. And so creating a skill for that really helped. And that essentially made it that once I locked down that skill and it knew the exact kind of styles we were going for, having sharp corners on everything, using these diagonal lines in the background, I was really able to then just tell Claude, on future pages, I was able to really quickly actually get a lot of this imagery created much quicker. As you can kind of see on these supporting pages, it was able to do these much more so on its own without me giving a ton of guidance and a ton of stuff because I'd already kind of locked down that skill. And then I followed that same process with those animations I mentioned that are more so Lottie animations. I created this first one, really liked it. I kind of spent time getting the easing to be right, the way the mouse moves to be the way I wanted. Then I repeated that same process. I had to create a skill. And then once that skill was there and it was locked down, I pretty much just, the process for the other ones is I'd upload 2 screenshots from their product, kind of the start state and end state, give it a bit of a description, and then it'd go and animate it following that skill. And everything ended up going really well. There's very little revisions after that. And that's all value that I'm providing to the client. So I've actually given them those skills. So they're using those skills themselves to create imagery and assets for their brand outside of the websites. And so that's something that's really cool. I even did that. You can see that I created a page for them for that.
Yep.
So they kind of have their whole system here that they can, give to designers for other things in the future. So I built that out. They can download any of these assets that I've already created. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see those 2 skills that I created, the site imagery and the self-playing demos one. So they can copy that, use that in their own instance to create those for other assets that they have. they don't need that when they're actually using the site. Those are installed on the site levels, so they can do it from there. But yeah, that's been a really cool way to just add some extra value for the client.
This is freaking awesome because I guess imagery is the number one thing to crack, and it looks like you've nailed that down. I'm assuming that skills are very brand specific and that they will change brand by brand just because there is some very specific things that are within there. But I do assume that it's a templatized approach where you have some basic outline of your philosophy for creating those visual assets. Now, I would really like to hear more about that, but I do know that we're approaching the ending of the podcast, and you've got a hard stop.
Yeah.
So it's been an awesome session. It's kind of more of a top level overview compared to like specifically going in and doing things, which is a great change of pace to understand how to approach this whole thing.
Let me share a couple more things too. Just I know we've shared a lot, but a couple other really cool things that I think everyone will like. So with every project, you're gonna have the client asking for little variation things. And that's something that like I was like, I'm not sure how easy that's gonna be outside of Figma, because in Figma you've got everything on a canvas, right? You copy a page, you create some variations, they see it there. What I honestly found out with this is you can do something even better. And like one of the first questions I got from the client is they're like, hey, we kind of like the font you use, but we'd like to see some other options. Like, how can we do that? In Figma, you'd go through and you'd probably, duplicate the frame, switch out the fonts in each frame, and then they could tell you which one they like the best. What I did here is I just added this picker at the bottom for different variations. So I loaded in 10 fonts that I thought looked pretty good. And then I was able to just tell the client, hey, go through, use that picker, and it just updates everywhere. And let me know which font you like the best. And so I've done that for a lot of these little variations just to allow the client to just tweak it and see what they like and then come back to me and let me know what's favorite. So I did that for this. And then also for deciding whether to have like buttons be squared or rounded off. So I did the same thing. I created like 4 variations. And so you can see when I change this out, it makes the button squared off. It makes the image squared off. And so the client can play around with that in a live view. And that's also one of my favorite things about this. How many times have you gotten a client where they've seen everything in Figma, they've signed off on it, but as soon as it gets into Webflow and they finally see a real preview link, they're like, oh, the font's too big or the font's too small, because they're seeing, most of the times the clients are not using the preview view in Figma. And so they're seeing the site a little bit zoomed out, or they're just not seeing it the way it's going to be in the browser. And I loved how everything they see is in the browser. So there's really no miscommunication about the proportions of things or anything. You get that feedback right away, and then you're locked in and everything looks the way they're expecting it to. So I've been loving this process. The other thing that is really cool, Figma came out with a good extension where you can copy a design and paste it into Figma. I wanted to call it, for anyone who likes Figma, you can simply use this and copy it literally, like it's as easy as this. So you can go and, build something out with AI, have it over here, use the Figma extension, capture the page, or you can capture an element and then go and paste it into Figma. And there's going to be a few things that it might mess up, but it's a pretty solid render. Okay. So since I have some animations on the page, gotta do this because it just exported them they weren't loaded when I ran it. So if I do it again, anyway, this didn't come over the cleanest, but what I've found is that extension is genuinely pretty good. You can usually get a pretty clean copy and paste from Figma or from the site to Figma. So if you're someone that wants to explore with Figma, you can just copy things over, play around in Figma, use that with your clients. You could even literally if the clients want to get feedback in Figma, you can do all those hero sections in Claude, copy and paste them all into a Figma file, and then use that when you're on the call with the client. So you can use Figma still. I just think there's a ton of advantages to using an agent in the design process a lot. So anyway, hope this kind of was insightful for anyone out there trying to design with AI.
I've got my mouth dropped. This is freaking awesome what you're doing. I do think that I'll ask you I'll ask you ad hoc regarding the skills for visual assets, just because I'm very interested to learn more about that. As I said, I know there's no time for that, and I'm not even
Yeah.
sure if you'd be willing to share, because that's kind of a secret sauce right now, isn't it?
I have no problem sharing stuff. It's no secret. I'm not someone to like keep any. I love just sharing with people, and I don't think there's any point in keeping things tight to the chest about a Claude skill or something, you know?
There's this word very hyped out called keeping, and you do none of that. But brother,
Yeah, I'm
it's been a pleasure. I
cool.
I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks a lot for sharing. You shared so much. Like at one point, I was just like holding my head, thinking this is so much info and so many workflows, which is really cool. For everyone listening and that wants to connect to you, how do they find you? How do they connect with you? And how do they support whatever project you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, just I'm on LinkedIn and X, so just Bradford Huber over there. You should be able to find me pretty easy. And you can check out our agency at native.agency if you'd like to work with us. Yeah, I mean, just connect with me there. Love to, chat with anybody who's got questions. I'm an easy person to reach and talk to. So sorry about my video, by the way. It looks like I have like a more official camera, and like sometimes it bugs out, and I couldn't switch over my webcam while this was recording. So sorry about that, but it was super fun talking, and excited to take any questions from anybody too. So
Well, thanks a lot for that. It really has been a pleasure. For everyone that want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Evgeny Tilipman. Our website is right here, khod.io. And the podcast is available on YouTube. It's the Moving Target podcast, and this episode will be live probably 2 weeks after filming. Great episode. Really enjoyed talking, Bradford. And yeah, let's connect again soon. Thanks a lot. And yeah, hope
okay,
that the project finishes up successfully.
okay, all right. Thanks so much, Evgeny.